In the middle of Rome, there is a building that should not still be standing. It is 1,700 years old, near enough. It has no steel in it. It was poured, not built. A single dome of artificial stone, 43 meters across, with a hole open to the sky at the top, so the rain falls straight through onto the floor. It is called the Pantheon, and it is still today the largest unreinforced concrete dome on Earth. Not the largest of the ancient world, the largest full stop. Nothing we have poured since, with all our machines and steel and chemistry, has beaten a dome cast by hand under an emperor named Hadrian. That fact ought to be impossible, because concrete is supposed to be the opposite of permanent. The concrete we pour today, the motorway, the car park, the block of flats, is designed to last 50 years, maybe 100. It cracks, it crumbles, it has to be patched and eventually knocked down. The Romans poured a material that gets stronger with age. We pour one that is dying from the day it sets. And here is the strange part. For 1,000 years, nobody could work out how they did it. The recipe was lost when Rome fell, and the West forgot how to make real concrete until almost the modern age. We have only just in the last few years understood why theirs lasts and ours does not. This is the history of the rock we learned to pour. Start with what concrete really is, because almost everyone gets it wrong. Concrete is liquid stone. You mix it wet, you pour it into any shape you like, and it turns into rock. That is the whole trick, and there is nothing else in the natural world that does it. It is made of two things. Most of it is just aggregate. Gravel, sand, broken stone, cheap rubble. That is the filler, the body. What holds it together is the other part, the binder, the glue. And the binder is where all the history lives. Now, the thing people always get wrong, concrete does not dry. It is not mud that hardens as the water leaves. It cures, it sets by a chemical reaction between the binder and water, a reaction that actually consumes the water and locks it into new crystals, which means concrete will set underwater. It will set in the rain, at the bottom of a harbor, inside a sealed mold. Add water to bring it to life. It does not dry out. It grows a stone skeleton from the inside. Get the binder right, and you can pour a building. Get it wrong, and you have expensive gravel. Everything that follows in this story is a 2,000-year argument about the binder. The Romans did not invent the idea of a binder. People had been making lime mortar for thousands of years. Burn limestone, add water, use it as a weak glue between bricks. What the Romans found was a particular gray powder, and it changed the world. Around the Bay of Naples, near a town called Pozzuoli, in the shadow of a volcano, there is a bed of volcanic ash. The Romans discovered that if you mixed that ash with lime and water, you did not get a weak mortar. You got a binder that set hard as rock, set even underwater, and only got stronger over time. They called the ash pozzolana after the town. They mixed it with lime and rubble and poured the result into wooden molds. And they called the material opus caementicium. We call it concrete, and it freed them from the wall. Before concrete, a big building was a problem of stacking. Stone on stone, brick on brick, held up by columns, and the columns had to be close together or the roof fell in. Concrete does not stack. It flows into a mold and becomes one continuous piece of stone in any shape you want. Arches, barrel vaults, domes, a civilization that could pour stone, could build things that a civilization that stacked stone could only dream of. And they built, everywhere, at a scale nobody would match again for over 1,000 years. The Colosseum stands on a ring of concrete foundations 12 meters deep. The great bathhouses, roofed with concrete vaults, held thousands of people under a single unbroken ceiling. The aqueducts, running for 100 kilometers across valleys, lined and sealed with it, and the harbors. This is the part that should stop you. The Romans built harbor walls by pouring concrete into wooden forms lowered into the sea, letting it set in the salt water. Seawater destroys modern concrete. It is one of the worst things you can do to it. Roman marine concrete did the opposite. It reacted with the seawater and grew new minerals inside itself, knitting tighter for 2,000 years. Some of those harbor blocks are still down there, still solid. At the top of it all sits the Pantheon, that single poured dome. Its concrete deliberately made lighter towards the top by mixing in lightweight volcanic rock, so the structure grows thinner and lighter as it rises. It is not just concrete. It is engineered concrete, tuned by hand, and it has stood, open to the weather, for the entire history of Christianity. Rome was the first concrete civilization. It would also be the last for a very long time. For 2,000 years, the obvious question hung there. Why does Roman concrete last when ours falls apart? The easy answer was the volcanic ash, and that is part of it. But it did not explain everything, because Roman concrete is full of little white lumps that for a century engineers dismissed as sloppy mixing. Evidence that the Romans just were not very careful. They had it exactly backwards. Recently, scientists took Roman concrete apart at the microscopic level and found that those white lumps, glass of lime, are a repair system. When a crack forms and water seeps in, it reaches one of those lumps, dissolves it, and the dissolved lime flows into the crack and recrystallizes. Gluing it shut, the concrete heals itself. A hairline crack that would be the beginning of the end for a modern structure is, in Roman concrete, simply sealed and forgotten. That is why it survives. It is not that it never cracks. It is that it repairs its own cracks for centuries with no one watching. We built a material that decays. They built one that heals, and then the knowledge of how to make it vanished from the earth. When the Western Roman Empire came apart, so did the thing that made the concrete possible, the organization. Concrete on the Roman scale needed quarries, lime kilns burning at high heat, the ash shipped from specific places, gangs of trained labor and engineers who knew the recipes. When the empire that ran all of that dissolved, the recipe dissolved with it. For roughly 1,000 years, Europe could not make real concrete. The great cathedrals of the Middle Ages, for all their beauty, are stacked, cut stone, block on block, held up by buttresses precisely because the builders no longer had a material they could pour into a shape and trust. It took them lifetimes to raise what the Romans had cast in a few years. The knowledge was not written down in any way that survived usefully. It was in the hands in the workshops, and when the workshops closed, it was gone. People looked at the Pantheon for 1,000 years, standing there impossibly, and could not reproduce it. It is one of the clearest examples we have of something civilization simply lost. Not a myth, not a legend, but a working industrial technology forgotten so completely that rediscovering it took the modern age. The way back began, as these things often do, with a very specific problem, a lighthouse that kept being destroyed by the sea. On a reef off the southwest coast of England, In the 1750s, an engineer named John Smeaton was asked to build a lighthouse that the waves would not take. Ordinary lime mortar was useless. It would not set in wet conditions and washed straight out. So Smeaton went looking for a mortar that would harden underwater and rediscovered by careful experiment the principle the Romans had known. Certain impure limestones, fired and ground, make a cement that sets in water. His lighthouse held, and the search for better water-setting cements was on. It ended in 1824, when a bricklayer from Leeds named Joseph Aspdin patented a process for making an artificial cement by burning limestone and clay together at high temperature and grinding the result to powder. He called it Portland cement because the hardened result looked like the prized building stone from the Isle of Portland. Portland cement is the gray powder in every bag of cement sold today. It is the binder that finally let the modern world pour stone again. Cheaper, more consistent, and available anywhere. Concrete is back after a 1,000-year absence. But it still had one great weakness, and fixing that would build the modern skyline. Concrete is enormously strong in one direction and pathetically weak in the other. Push down on it, squeeze it, load it in compression, and it is superb. That is what stone does. But pull it, bend it, stretch it, put it in tension, and it snaps, because it has almost no tensile strength at all. A concrete beam loaded in the middle cracks along its underside and fails. Steel is the exact opposite. Steel is magnificent in tension and awkward in compression. So you put them together. You cast steel bars into the concrete, down at the underside where the tension is, and now you have a material that is strong in both directions at once. The compression handled by the stone, the tension handled by the steel hidden inside it. Reinforced concrete. The idea arrived of all places through a French gardener named Joseph Monnier, who was trying to make flower pots and water tanks that would not crack, and reinforced his cement with iron mesh. From flower pots it went to beams, and from beams it went to everything. Because reinforced concrete can do what no material before it could. It can span and it can rise. It is cheap, it is poured on site into any shape, and with steel inside it, there is almost no limit to how far it can reach. The bridge, the dam, the tower block, the motorway flyover, the foundation of every skyscraper, all of it is this one marriage of poured stone and hidden steel. And so we built the modern world out of it on a scale that is genuinely difficult to hold in your head. Concrete is, after water, the most consumed substance on the planet. We pour something like 30 billion tons of it a year. That is several tons every year for every person alive. There is now enough concrete on Earth to cover every square meter of land the human race has ever touched, and then some. It is so ordinary that it has become invisible. It is the gray floor under your feet, and the gray wall at your back, and the gray road outside, and the gray frame inside the building you're in right now. It is the single most important building material in human history. And precisely because it is everywhere, nobody thinks about it at all. We treat it as permanent. The city looks eternal. The concrete looks like rock, and rock lasts. Except this concrete does not last. And the reason is hidden inside it, the very thing that made it strong. The steel that gives reinforced concrete its strength is also killing it. Steel rusts when it meets water and air. Inside good, fresh concrete, it is protected, sealed in an alkaline stone that keeps corrosion at bay. But concrete is not perfectly sealed. Over the years, water finds its way in through tiny cracks and pores, and it carries the enemies of steel with it: chlorides from sea air and road salt, carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. And when the steel inside finally begins to rust, something quietly catastrophic happens. Rust takes up more room than the steel it comes from, several times more. So the corroding bar swells from inside the concrete and pushes outward with enormous force and cracks the stone open from within. Engineers call it concrete cancer. Once it starts, it feeds itself. The crack lets in more water, the water rusts more steel, the rust opens more cracks. This is why modern reinforced concrete has a lifespan measured in decades. The structures poured in the great building booms of the 20th century are reaching the end of it now, all at once, all over the world. The bridges and car parks and flyovers quietly rotting from their steel outward. The Romans, of course, used no steel. Their concrete had no rusting heart to destroy it. The thing we added to make concrete reach the sky is the thing that dooms it. And the thing they left out is part of why the Pantheon still stands. There is one more cost to all this gray, and it is in the air. Making cement is one of the largest single sources of carbon dioxide on the planet. Somewhere around 8% of all human emissions. If the cement industry were a country, it would be the third largest emitter on Earth, behind only China and the United States. And the problem is not just the energy, though that is huge. The kilns have to be heated to around 1,500 degrees. The deeper problem is chemical. To make cement, you roast limestone, and limestone is made of carbon. Roasting it drives that carbon straight out into the air as carbon dioxide, as an unavoidable part of the reaction. Even with perfectly clean energy, making ordinary cement releases carbon because the carbon is baked into the recipe. So the material we have wrapped the entire modern world in comes at a price we are only now adding up. A material that is quietly decaying and that warms the planet in the making. Stand back and look at what it is. Concrete is the closest thing we have ever made to instant geology. A liquid you pour that becomes stone. With it, one civilization roofed the ancient world and another built the modern one. It is under almost everything you have ever stood on. And it holds two facts that do not sit comfortably together. The Romans made a version that heals itself and lasts for thousands of years. And then we lost it for 1,000 more. We made a version that reaches to the clouds and rots within a lifetime and wrap the whole planet in it. There is a lesson buried in that grave, if you want it. We assumed concrete was permanent because it looks like rock, and rock is forever. But the rock we poured is not the rock the Romans poured. Ours is a brilliant, cheap, temporary thing, decaying quietly under the cities, waiting to be rebuilt. The Pantheon does not need rebuilding. It has stood open to the rain for 1,900 years, and it will very likely still be standing when the last of our motorways has been ground back into gravel. We spent 2,000 years learning how to pour stone, and we are still not as good at it as a man who worked for Hadrian.